After waiting a while, I just wanted to go ahead and pick these up. The yellows came out first, and I was kind of reluctant to buy those just because they seemed a lot stiffer. So they came out with the blacks next, and this just seemed right up my alley, and I went ahead and pulled the trigger on these. So fairly excited to get these in the car. I think they're going to be a good upgrade. They're going to complement the car as a sports car when it's needed, and hopefully they won't add too much stiffness during daily drivability. I mean, I know I'm going to have to compromise a little bit and kind of meet these springs in between the stock springs and the yellows. So I know what I'm in for, but hopefully these are going to be overall the best for me. So those were the fronts. Here are the rears. They're pretty nice. Nice powder coat on here. And I've got all the bump stops in the box as well. So that's it, really. We're gonna go ahead and get these installed on the car. To be cautious, when I remove the wheels, I like to put them underneath the car, right behind the jack stands. That way, if I do have some failure, it's gonna screw up my rims and not me. So now they recommend removing this ABS line. Alright, you just have to squeeze that, leave it dangling out of the way. Okay, we need to disconnect the stainless steel line from the strut. This is a 12mm bolt. We'll remove that. We have these two bolts that are holding on the strut. 18mm, and down here an 18mm. Nuts are on the other side. Since one of these is for the suspension, and I don't recall which one, I'm just gonna go ahead and put a notch with a screwdriver like this. So hopefully when I put these back in, I'll be able to realign them, and I won't have too many alignment issues right off the bat. Obviously, I'll have to go and get a realignment after this. So the car is set up with the new springs. There is a washer that goes behind the nut. Just remember that. Looks like there's no washer on that bottom bolt. There's the top bolt, the longer of the two. Alright. That bottom bolt is a pain to get out. Wow. We'll pull this away from the strut assembly and get it loose. Alright. So like that's loose. I'm just kind of push the hub assembly out of the way. Now our strut is just dangling free. So we'll have to go up top, remove those three bolts. Three 12mm bolts right here to remove. So I'll start out by loosening these up. Or actually, yeah, loosen them up. Do not take them all the way off. Just yet. Alright, I'll remove this one all the way. Leave those other two on. Be sure not to drop this. I hate dropping bolts in the engine bay. Gosh. Alright, so we got that. Using these other two to hold the strut in place. And then I'm going to grab the strut from underneath with my hand. Take these off at the same time. Hold the strut and then pull it out. So I'm removing these two 12mm bolts from the top right now and holding the strut at the same time. Alright, it's loose. Get back underneath. Make sure I don't pull any of these lines at the same time. Watch out for that ABS line and the brake line. So now we've got the whole strut assembly out. Remove this plastic tab off the top. So this is the spring compression tool I picked up from, where was it? AutoZone. So I've rented this out. It was $55. Pretty much your $55 is a deposit. You can take it back. When you take it back, you get your money back. So we'll use this kit to compress the springs. Oh yeah, passenger side, I'm definitely going to use power tools. This is ridiculous. But it's better to be safe and get smacked in the face with something that's got stored energy. So we've compressed the stock spring with the compression tool. I can see the gap in here from the spring. Now we can remove the top hat. Okay, so we've got the 17mm nut removed. Honestly guys, if you don't have a friend holding the strut and a big breaker bar, this is going to be a little difficult to get off with by yourself without power tools. So just FYI on that. So here we've got the RCE spring, and then here's the stock spring right here. A little bit of a comparison. You can see looks like it's going to add a little bit of a drop, but not really significant, which is great. Need to remove the stock bump stop from the assembly. This hole is bigger than this hole, so just put this on until it stops naturally. Won't force it. Make sure the plastic lining for this is pointing down toward the strut perch, and then there's also a small perch stop right here. We have to make sure spring is sitting on that. So should fit in there nice and easy. Yep, right there. So I've made sure the spring is sitting in the perch accurately. It's right up against this perch stop on this side, and I've got the spring compressed with the tools. So now I need to work on reassembling it. We'll put the dust cover back on first. Our perch stop for the top. And to align this, it looks like they used this circle right here and lined it up between the strut mounts at the bottom where those two bolts we took out. So that's how I'm going to align this. Get it as close as I can. Alright, next goes our washer, and then our top mount. And this is our 14mm bolt that will go back on, 17mm bolt that will go back on top. This gets 41 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, so we've got the new strut assembled with the new spring on there, and last thing to do is just to put this dust cover back on and put it back in the car. These top hat bolts are 18 foot-pounds. We've got our strut bolts back in. They're lined up to the notches I made earlier, so that's as best as I can do as far as trying to keep the car aligned until I get in alignment. So remember this top bolt has a washer and then the nut. Okay. And the bottom bolt just threads right on. So while I'm torquing these nuts down, I'm going to hold the bolt with a open-ended wrench and hope that they don't disalign themselves from the notches I made. That way we'll have the best chance to keep our alignment. These strut bolts get 129 foot-pounds of torque. Not much room in there between the dust shield and the fender. There we go. Alright, so that's one side complete. What we have to do is put our 12mm bolt back for the brake line. Okay, we're at the rear of the car. Here's the rear strut. And the nut down here is a 17mm. We need to remove that. And then we need to remove the end link nut after that. The bolt on the other side is 17mm. You need to hold that while getting this nut off so it doesn't spin around on you. Next up is the end link nut right here. This is 14mm. We'll loosen that up. The nuts removed, we'll need to go ahead and remove the bolts. We'll grab the mallet. Alright. There's the bolt. So just remember that the nut will go back in toward the rear of the car. We need to get the one on the end link. Alright, so right now I've got the ratcheting crescent wrench on the 14mm bolt right here. I have found that I don't need to remove the side panel. It'd probably be a little easier, but I'm just going to go ahead and remove it with this ratchet. So I'll remove both these bolts the same way. Alright, there's one nut. Alright, there's the second nut. So all of the nuts and bolts are loose. I've got the strut bolt out, the nuts obviously off. Tie rod bolt is out of there as well. I've removed the two 14mm nuts that are holding in the strut from inside the trunk. So the way they want you to take this strut out is to push down on the rotor hat and at the same time try to get the strut end to come out toward you. Now it's pretty difficult, I'm not gonna lie about that. You do have to do a lot of finagling to kind of get this out of here, but once you get it, it's not so bad. So let's see what we can do. So I'm gonna push down on the rotor hat and try to get my screwdriver in here and maybe, there we go, push the strut. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing down on the rotor hat with my forearm, and I've got my screwdriver behind the strut and I'm pushing it out to me. Okay, now I've got the strut loose. Push down on the rotor hat again and just try to wiggle it out. Woo. Alright, like I said, that's not the easiest thing to do, but you can finagle it out. So now all I have to do is remove this 14mm bolt from the top hat. Since there's not too much compression on this, I'm just going to go ahead and hold down on it and remove that nut on top. I'm not going to worry about compressing them with the strut tool. Alright, so we got the nut off. Need to remove the top hat, but the spring comes with it. I found that's what happens most of the time, so we'll worry about taking that off the top hat a little later. Take off the dust shield, and we won't be using the stock bump stop anymore, so we'll remove that as well. So we've got our RCE bump stop on. The bigger hole will go on first, and then the smaller one will stop on that lip. Alright, next we'll put the dust cover on. So we go ever so gently. We got our RCE spring. Put that on next. Remember that we do have this perch stop right here that the spring needs to be sitting on. We've got to remove our top hat from the OEM spring. Just kind of pull it right off, just like that. Put it on our new spring assembly and try to get these two bolts right here to line up with the strut holes at the bottom of the strut. Alright, I'll lightly thread on the 14mm bolt while trying to compress the spring. Same time. And the top nut right here, oops, the top nut right here gets 41 foot-pounds of torque. We've got our strut assembled, so just like taking this strut off, we'll have to do a lot of finagling to put it back in. Recommended way to do that is to start with your bolts, try to get those into the hole, the big hole, and then try to line them up into the smaller holes. Okay, so we're in the control arm right now with the bottom of the strut. Now we can try to line up the holes up top. We've got the top of the strut and the two 14mm bolts lined up. So I went ahead and went back into the trunk. I finger tightened the 14mm bolts for the top of the strut. So now I have to kind of just play with the bottom and trying to get it to line up the original hole. Control arm kind of lined up with the bottom of the strut. I'm going to stick my screwdriver in here and line it up a little bit more. So I'll pull it until I can get, I think I can get the bolt back in. Now we can put the nut on. Man, these things have got a bunch of dirt on them. So now let's get that end link all sorted out. I'm just going to line up the hole, push the bolt through. Okay. Get it through the rest of the way. Alright. We go ahead and put our bolt back on, or our nut back on. So the 2 strut bolts inside the trunk, the 14 millimeters, get 18 foot-pounds of torque. Our end-link bolt will get 39 foot-pounds of torque. The strut bolt will get 89 foot-pounds of torque. Again, that's 17 millimeter. Okay, so we just finished the install for the RCE springs. For me personally, I've never installed springs before, so it was definitely a challenge. If I had to go a rating system from 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest, I'd probably put it around a 6 or a 7, just because there's definitely a learning curve, I feel, with the type of, well, just with the shocks. And getting those out, trying to get those removed, you know, messing around with them. But overall, the you know, it wasn't too bad of an install. It's pretty straightforward. Directions that RCE gave were pretty good, so I didn't have trouble following those. And I look forward to definitely driving these and giving you guys a review of what I think of the regular guy springs. So look forward to that video, and I hope to see you on it. See you guys.